Around the world, science and technology have been applied to solve all types of problems, and time after time, they have delivered results that have propelled humanity forward. However, in the face of economic challenges, how can science and technology come to Nigeria's rescue? On this week's episode of the program, we'll look at science, technology, and innovations. Hello there, welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Gloria Umezuke. The Federal Ministry of Science and Technology is charged with the responsibility of facilitating the development and deployment of science and technology apparatus to enhance the pace of socio-economic development in the country. But we'll be looking at how the ministry has fared in the discharge of its responsibilities in our interview segment. But first, what are the stories that made headlines within the week in the nation's capital? President Muhammadu Buhari has been conferred with the Grand Patron of the Nigerian Red Cross Society. When members of the humanitarian group visited the state, the president commended the society for its various interventions in humanitarian situations in the country, especially during the Nigerian Civil War.
The Nigerian government, I think we will try and do our best to help you, because we have seen your activities throughout the country. It has been consistent, it has been humanitarian, especially what you are doing now in the northeast, from the time that the Boko Haram has substantial part of Borno State to now that they are not holding any local government, and what you are doing in the IDPs, internally displaced persons camps, what you have been doing, we are very grateful for that. It has to be it's a real commitment. It's something that one cannot be paid, but we are committed to it. You and the Red Crescent, you are doing your best. So I thank you very much.
The National Assembly has reaffirmed its vote of no confidence on the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Ibrahim Idris, and warned against systematic harassment and humiliation by the executive of perceived political opponents. These were part of the resolutions of the lawmakers after an emergency joint session which was held behind closed doors. The Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, read the resolutions. The emergency joint session comes amid renewed friction between the legislative and executive arms of government.
The security agencies must be given the marching orders to curtail the sustained killings of Nigerians across the country and protect the life and properties of Nigerians, as this is the primary duty of any responsible government. 2, the systemic harassment and humiliation by the executive of perceived political opponents, people with contrary opinions, including legislators and judiciary, by the police and other security agencies must stop. We also hereby reaffirm our earlier resolutions of the vote of no confidence on the Inspector General of Police, who does nothing other than preside over killings of innocent Nigerians and outright disregard for constitutional authority of both the executive and the legislative.
Lawmakers, in their resolutions, also sent a direct threat to President Buhari.
The National Assembly will not hesitate to evoke its constitutional powers.
As the world marks the World Environment Day, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is calling corporate organizations and individuals to do more to prevent environmental pollution. The United Nations has set aside June 5 annually for reflection on the environmental status of the Earth. Speaking at an event to mark the 2018 World Environment Day, Professor Oshibaju described plastic pollution as an environmental epidemic created daily by consumption habits that favor the one-off use of plastics, plastic bags, plastic bottles, disposable cups, sweet wrappers and toys.
There are of course questions about the limited options for cheap packaging of food and drinks, especially where consumers are relatively poor. It's my view that for controlling the proliferation of plastic sachets, we must go back to the major producers of fast-moving goods to put in place recycling programs that could effectively ensure that while we seek environmentally friendly options for packaging, we are keeping the environment as free of plastics as possible.
The Minister of Defense, Mr. Mansour Danali, has called for the suspension of the implementation of the anti-grazing law. He argued that the suspension will reduce the tension in troubled states. He disclosed this to State House correspondents after a security meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari. Benue, Taraba, Rivers and Ekiti had in 2017 implemented the anti-open grazing law to stop the consistent clash between the farmers and herdsmen, which has caused a lot of bloodshed and left thousands homeless. Meanwhile, the National Assembly has asked the Minister of Defense, Mr. Mansour Danali, to promptly withdraw his call on states which have an anti-grazing law enacted to suspend the law. Both chambers of the National Assembly discussed the minister's comments separately and arrived at the same conclusion.
Advise the Minister of Defense to withdraw his statement on his call for the withdrawal of the anti-grazing laws in Benue and Taraba, as these laws were properly enacted in accordance with the powers of the State Houses of Assembly.
The Federal Executive Council has approved the review of the country's tax law system to exempt the charges of value-added taxes on some goods and services. The Council had on February 1, 2017, approved the revised national tax policy in order to have a robust tax system that would promote investment and improve revenue for sustainable national development. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, after council meeting, said the approval of the tax laws reform by the National Tax Policy Implementation Committee now removes obsolete, ambiguous and contradictory provisions in the laws. According to the minister, the strategy will increase government revenue, simplify the process of paying taxes and doing business, promote micro, small and medium enterprises, and protect most vulnerable persons in the country.
So, for example, for VAT, there's to be exemption now for residential property, leases on rentals, transport for the general public, and life insurance. In the short term, of course, that means a revenue loss for the government, but we think in the long run that's the right thing to do. It's improving ease of doing business and reducing the tax burden on our people.
President Muhammadu Buhari has announced June 12 as the new Democracy Day in Nigeria. He also conferred a posthumous Grand Commander of the Federal Republic title on the presumed winner of June 12, 1993 presidential election, late Chief Moshood Abiola. The president, in a tweet on his official handle, explained that June 12 will replace May 29 because it is a more symbolic day. MKO's running mate in the election, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, and the legendary human rights activist, Chief Gani Fawemi, were also honored with the title Grand Commander, Order of the Niger. The president has also instructed the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, to gazette his order on June 12. Meanwhile, a rowdy session erupted in the House of Representatives over the declaration of June 12 as the new Democracy Day. The plenary turned rowdy when the lawmakers debated the powers of the executive to make such pronunciation, which is against the Public Holiday Act. They further asked the president to honor the then chairman of the election body, Professor Humphrey Nwosu. Speaker Yakubu Dogara consequently froze the debate and referred the matter to the House Committee on Justice, Rules and Business.
This matter is referred to Committee on Justice.
Also, the Senate has asked the Independent National Electoral Commission to declare the results of the June 12, 1999 presidential election. The lawmakers resolved to support the declaration of June 12 as a public holiday, but insisted that May 29 should remain Inauguration Day. They also asked the federal government to pay the entitlements due to Abiola's family as president and that of Alhaji Babagana Kingibe, his then running mate, as vice president.
Welcome back. Now, residents of the Federal Capital Territory who are in the habit of crossing the highways, which is a dangerous habit that has claimed several lives, are at the threat of facing the law as the Federal Road Safety Commission is considering setting up mobile courts to try residents who are in the habit of abandoning pedestrian bridges for the highway. Well, this week on FCT InFocus, we take a look at this trend. Take a listen.
Reckless, dangerous and irresponsible. These are some of the words used to describe what these pedestrians are doing. This act has a name. It's called jaywalking. Jaywalking is to walk across a street in violation of traffic law, especially by crossing outside of a marked pedestrian crosswalk at an intersection. As we can see here, there is a pedestrian bridge on this highway, yet with wanton disregard for safety, people cross the roads in droves. Public funds were deployed for the construction of these pedestrian bridges. For instance, as at 2014, the Ministry of Works spent over 303 million naira to construct the pedestrian bridges at the Sheraton and Banex junctions in the nation's capital. While some people decide to use the bridge, a vast majority do not.
Some people don't have the strength to climb the bridge. People like me, if I climb the bridge, sometimes I have problem with my legs. My leg will start shaking. Some people see to cross the road is very easy for them. That's why they cross the road. Some people, it's not about the easy way, but me, I find it easy way to cross the road than to climb the bridge.
Government make a provision for, I think, pedestrian very nearby. It's that most of the vehicles that drop people, they drop people before the pedestrian. And by the time you look at pedestrian, maybe her head is far. Instead of the Nigeria, you know, Nigeria is supposed to be patient, get yourself like from here to that place. It's not something that is supposed to relax and try to make sure that you get there. But some people feel like get there time maybe is a waste of time.
There's a pedestrian bridge over there because a lot of hazard. If not for the minister we have today, and this should be enforced because we live lives as if we have original life back home and we take photocopy out. This is a highway. So normally that's a pedestrian bridge. So if a government is shouting of revenue, bringing people here to catch these people, to hold these people so that you can generate revenue. Because by the time you make a fine for people crossing here, everybody will go and use the pedestrian bridge.
Jaywalking may not be a crime in Nigeria. However, it's a dangerous act that has led to the loss of lives. According to the Federal Road Safety Commission, in the first quarter of 2018, 8 people died in the FCT because they chose to cross the highways.
From January to date, so far we've had about 8 people that have been knocked down by trying to run across the routes. Of course, by, let me say, hit and run. Then, and mostly, these people are knocked down in the evening, mostly in the evening. Now, these 8 casualties, 3 died. 3 were seriously injured. Okay? And then the other 2, even though they were injured, but it was mild.
To check this trend, the FRC is hoping to set up mobile courts to prosecute anyone endangering his life by ignoring the bridges for the highways.
We've not yet had any mobile court that people like that are arrested and prosecuted. But the minister has put in place a ministerial task force that checks people who are running across these roads when there are pedestrian bridges. Let me appeal to all pedestrians. The bridges are not there for fun, they are not there for decorations, but they are there for our safety. Let us please, for God's sake, use them.
It may look like a convenient exercise to simply cross the highway for many pedestrians, but making the decision to use the pedestrian bridges will surely be beneficial in the long run.